Welcome to Lesson 16 by Chess Achieves. In this lesson, we'll be looking for checkmate drills. We're going to learn the basic principles of checkmate. We're going to start off with one of the most common ways to create checkmate, which is a king and a rook versus a king. In this particular scenario, the first thing you're going to want to do with your rook is to simply put pressure on the black king and create an invisible fence. By pushing the black king to one edge of the board, we'll have the potential to create checkmate. It's worth noting that you don't want to let your opponent go to the middle of the board. In the middle of the board, they can just dance around and you won't be able to checkmate them. The only way you can create checkmate with a king and a rook versus a king is to push them to one edge of the board and then bring both pieces, the king and the rook, down together to create checkmate. So we'll continue on now in this particular scenario. Now that we've created an invisible fence, it's the black army's turn. And the black army has little opportunity other than to go try to eliminate the rook. So the black army will simply start heading towards the rook. The white army, realizing it needs two pieces in order to create checkmate in this situation, will start bringing the king. Black army continues pushing towards the rook. This is the second move for the black army. If the black army can survive 50 moves, 50 moves from the last piece captured or the last pawn moved, then it can get a draw. In this particular situation, there are no more pawns to move, there are no more pieces to capture, so the black army can start counting towards its 50 moves. The black army continues with move 2, moving towards the rook. White army moves forward. Move 3 for the black army. Of course, the rook is now under attack, so care must be taken not to grab your king in this situation. If you were to touch your king now as the white army, you'd have to move your king. If you lose your rook, it's automatically a draw, because a king versus a king would be a draw. The rook, being a long-range weapon, can simply move to the opposite side of the board and keep the fence maintained, so the black army is trapped against the back rank. Black army continues. White army moves forward. Black army is heading, of course, for the rook again. White army comes in. Black army comes in. In this situation, it's the white army's turn. The white army now has to decide what square to take. You do not take the square directly in front of the opposing king. You want to go diagonally either to f6 or to d6. In this case, f6 would be better by taking the diagonal line. This cuts off the black king. If the black king were to now step to the f8 square, white could create checkmate by moving his rook forward. But looking at this particular situation from here, the black army chooses to go the opposite way, not wanting to step into checkmate. Goes the other way. The white king simply starts chasing him down. In this situation, the black army only has one legal move on the next turn. He moves to the b8 square, and now checkmate is within our grasp. We simply have to move the rook down to the last square on h8 and it'll create checkmate. This particular situation is how you will checkmate with a king and a rook versus a king. It requires both pieces. Notice the white king is now directly in front of the black king, but the black king stepped in front of the white king. This is checkmate. They cannot capture, interpose, or move to get out of it, and the game is. In our second example, we're going to continue with the same combination of pieces, a king and a rook versus a king. The process is the same, but this time we're going to have to work a little bit harder to push our opponent to one edge of the board in order to create checkmate. Again, with a king and a rook versus a king, you cannot allow your opponent to stay in the middle of the board. You cannot checkmate him in the middle of the board. Nor should you just start checking him randomly. I call that crazy check. You're going to check like a crazy person and you just start checking the king with no apparent plan. Your first action is going to be to create a fence just like it was in the last scenario. So we set the rook up. The black king again has no other choice but to go after the rook. That would be move 1 for the black king. The white army follows up. Move 2 for the black king. The white army follows up. Move 3 for the black king. Just as in the last scenario, we can move to the opposite side. There are alternatives here, but we're going to follow the same process. Move 4 for the black king. Now, in this situation, the white army moved its rook because, again, the white king does not want to step in front, directly in front in a straight line of the black king. The black king needs to step in front of the white king in order to make the situation right. Let's say the black king makes that mistake and steps in front. Move 6 for the black army. White steps forward now and can push the black king in one direction. The black king cannot step down to the 4th rank because the white king is protecting all those squares. Black king has to step up. Move 7 for the black army. Again, the black army is trying to reach 50 moves in order to get a draw. White army, again, does not want to step directly in front of the black king, so he steps to one side. Move 8 for the black army. The rook will go to the opposite side. Move 9 for the black army. The rook tempos again because the white king does not want to step in front. You don't need to run away from the black king if you're the white army. Move 11 for the black army. Move 12, we're simply chasing him down now as the white army. Move 13. Now, the rook can now pin the black king against one side of the board because the king has stepped to one edge. And now the rook locks him into place. The black king cannot take the rook because the white king is protecting it. The black army has to move again away. The white army just starts to creep up with his king. Black army comes again. We're simply going to fight from afar. Black army heads towards the corner. Notice if the black army had stepped down to the h5 square, we would have been a turn away from checkmate, but we're going to chase him down now. And now we have our opportunity again. The black king has stepped in front of the white king in a straight line, and we can present checkmate on the subsequent turn. So in this particular example, we saw how to push a rook to create an invisible fence to allow us to push the black king to one edge of the board. Again, we have to do it in 50 moves or less. Do not randomly check your opponent. You want to check him only when you can push him in one direction towards an edge. In this third example, let's say we have a little extra good fortune in our game and we're up by 2 rooks. The process is somewhat similar to the last process that we looked at when we had a king and a rook versus a king. Here, with a king and 2 rooks versus a king, it's a little bit easier. The process, though, starts the same. We'll continue by starting to move our rook up to create an invisible fence. The black army will try to eliminate one of the rooks. The white army attacks now from the opposite side. These are the 2 pieces we're going to use to create checkmate, just the rooks. We won't need our king in this particular example. The black army is forced to move up now to the 6th rank. It cannot move down because the rook on a4 creates an invisible fence, and now the fence is pushing him even up higher. So he steps up. The other rook can come up again, forcing the black king now to go to the 7th rank. He steps up again. Here, caution needs to be used. We can't attack with the rook on the h file this time, as the black king would then take our rook on the a file. But since the rooks are long-range weapons and the black king is attacking the rook up close, we're just going to simply move the rook to the opposite side, making it black's turn. The black rook heads back the other way. The white rook comes up again, forcing now the black king to step to the 8th rank. And then the rook can step up one more time, creating checkmate. Again, it took 2 pieces in order to create checkmate. If you get to an endgame, it's very rare you can win with 1 piece. You usually need 2 pieces to work in combination with each other. In this case, when you have rooks or even a queen, you can set up invisible fences, push your opponent to one edge of the board to create checkmate. In our 4th example, we're going to look for a checkmate situation without having a rook. One should always be paying attention to the opportunities their opponent king has for movement. In this case, the black king is stuck. He has no legal squares to move to. And so if we had the ability just to check him, we would create checkmate if he can't get out of it and capture the piece that's attacking him. In this case, we might be tempted to try to promote our pawn, but better would be to take checkmate directly. We can simply move the knight to the f7 square, and the king is under attack. The black army cannot capture to remove the knight, cannot interpose ever against the knight because the knight can jump over other pieces, and it cannot move to get out of this situation. So here's an example of a knight smother mating a king in the back corner. If the king simply had created a little air hole for himself, he could have gotten out of the situation. But throughout your games, you should constantly be looking for ways to checkmate your opponent well before the endgame. So it's important we know how to identify opportunities for checkmate. Just because you have more material than your opponent doesn't mean you're going to win. You still have to be able to close the game with checkmate. In this situation, the white army has an opportunity to checkmate his opponent. He can simply move the queen to the g7 square to create checkmate. Let's go through the three opportunities. Can the black army capture the queen? No, that's not a legal move in this case because the rook is protecting the queen. The king cannot capture pieces that are protected. There's no other piece to capture the queen. There's no empty squares to interpose on, nor is there any material to interpose with. And the black king cannot move to a square that's not under attack. So this is another example of checkmate. In this example, if it's the white army's turn, the white army has an opportunity to checkmate the black army with a single piece. Again, this doesn't commonly happen. Usually you're going to need two pieces working in combination in order to checkmate your opponent. But it does occasionally arise, and you should watch for the opportunity. In this case, if the white army simply moves its rook down to the 8th rank, it's checkmate. The black king cannot capture the piece that's attacking him, nor are there any other pieces. Can't interpose. The pawns are headed towards the bottom of the board. And the king cannot move to a square that's not under check. This is called back rank mate. And again, it's forcing checkmate with just a single piece. Try to watch for this opportunity with your pieces, especially if you're down material. Sometimes your opponent can be up significantly, but overlook back rank mate. When trying to solve for checkmate, it's important to look at the opposing king. In this case, if we look at the black army's king, he currently only has one legal square to move to. He can only move to the h8 square. So he has very few choices in places to go if he were to be attacked. So what we need to do is we need to place the black king in check in such a way that he can't stay where he is, and he also can't move to the h8 square. Since the h8 square is in a horizontal line, we should look to use a piece that moves horizontally and can attack horizontally. In this case, the white army can simply move the rook to the f8 square, giving check. The black king cannot take the rook because it's supported by the bishop, again using two pieces to create checkmate in combination. Cannot move to the h8 square because that would still be check. So we can't capture, there's no squares to interpose, we can't move, that means it's checkmate again. In solving checkmate drills, you want to keep using that process and looking for ways that the black king can move, and how can you prevent him from going to those squares. So in review for today, checkmate can be created at all sorts of different points during a game. In general, you're going to use two pieces in order to checkmate your opponent. It's going to take a combination in order to create that opportunity. Care should be taken in looking for ways for your opponent to checkmate you before you decide to move forward with an attack. Checkmate supersedes any other plans you may have. If you're being threatened with checkmate, you have to address that situation first, and then the game can continue on. Look for opportunities to create fences to push your opponent to the edge of the board. Good luck, players.